So let us take a moment together at the beginning of this meeting. Time to arrive here in our minds as well as our bodies and online. Time to put aside the busyness of the day so far and to prepare ourselves to focus on the business of this meeting. On Sunday, we had a National Thank You Day, and that's a good thing to carry into our week. To be grateful, count our blessings, and to give thanks. So today we hold in our hearts and minds all that we are thankful for. Particularly at this time, we give thanks for the National Health Service, for all who work in our local hospitals, St Heliers and St George's, for the COVID vaccination centres and pop-up clinics, and all other healthcare settings in this borough. We give thanks for our families and friends, our homes and our neighbours, this borough of Merton in which we live, for all that it provides to help its citizens flourish. Education, social care, housing, open spaces. For all council staff and officers, their gifts and skills. And this evening we give thanks for Jed Curran, retiring after 17 years as Chief Executive, for all that he has contributed in his time with Merton, and for Hannah Doody as she steps into this role. And so let us pray. Faithful God, may your peace and love be present among us as we meet this evening. Come, bless our gathering with unity, wisdom, and hope. We pray for a unity of purpose. Build in us all a deep respect for one another so that we can work together for the common good of all in this borough. We pray for wisdom. May our thoughts and conversations be filled with wisdom and lead us to right choices for the flourishing of all in this borough. We pray for hope. Come stir your hope in our hearts, strengthen our resolve and renew our energy to achieve the best possible outcomes for all in this borough. Faithful God, hear our prayer. Amen.
Please be seated. Welcome to this council meeting, my first one, a slightly different one to normal, but nevertheless, hopefully a step towards meeting together in the future. Some members are joining virtually, so when you make a speech, the clerk will let you know when you have 1 minute left, and again, when your time is up. Members within the chamber, the traffic light system here and the timer on the screens will indicate when we'll have 1 minute remaining and when you will be at the end. The microphones will be operated for you, so do not, no, you're operating your own microphones in the chamber, but those at home, I think, will need to unmute themselves. Please also note that indicative votes on motions and amendments will be taken from members attending virtually via electronic polling and then formally in the chamber. The poll will appear on screen after the members present have cast their vote, and I will announce the result of the vote of those watching on the live stream. A vote will then be taken in the chamber by a show of hands. To be clear to the public watching, only those votes cast by members present in the chamber will count for the formal vote, but it was considered important that all members have a chance to express their views. Please, could I remind members that the chat function on Zoom should be used, not be used to send messages to all attendees. If you have a technical issue, please direct it to a member of Democratic Services via the private chat facility. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Christie.
No apologies, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barlow.
Mayor.
Councillor McGrath. Councillor Southgate.
No apologies.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No declarations. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, it's the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of April and the 21st of April. Is there any dissent to the minutes of the meeting held on either the 13th or the 21st of April? As there is no dissent, I shall take that as agreed. On to announcements. Does the leader or the chief executive have any announcements? Okay, I will be very brief with my announcements. Thank you. Thank you for all the kind words I've had in the last few weeks and the support I've had as in my new role as mayor. I will try to do the best to make sure that I serve the community and serve the council well on that. I've had quite a few events, including the Merton Council Chamber of Commerce AGM, the Windrush Day event, Wimbledon College of Arts summer graduation show, Queen's Court Residential Care Home and Cumberland Residential Care Home visits, the Edith sponsored swim, which you still have a chance to sign up and donate to. I will send out a link if you need that again. Morden Rotary Club's annual meeting, Wimbledon Tennis Championships, which was a joy last week, a tour of the Polka Theatre, which I would encourage everyone to go to once it's open, and the Accutrio Award event online. Upcoming events you'll hear more about once the leaflet's produced, but it will start with a thank you for the outgoing mayors, Councillor Howard and Councillor Kenny, on the 20th of July, a charity cricket match we're hoping in September, the Silver Sunday event for councillors are asked to submit a nominee, Movember, a meal at Taste Restaurant in November, Christmas dinner, a music concert, a Mediterranean meal in January. You see there's a theme of eating a lot in this year. A charity MasterChef competition, I'm hoping in February, tours of the All England and of the AFC Wimbledon, and the Mayor's Ball. There'll be more to announce, but I hope that's a good start to the year. I now move on to the slightly amended agenda because we've decided to bring forward the appointment of the chief executive to this moment now. So we have got a slight change this evening and we'll be taking this item, as I said, now. And we'll then return to the rest of the agenda to run through. Councillor Allison, will you move this report?
And I formally move the appointment of our new Chief Executive, Hannah Doody. However, with all respect to her, I would like to focus this evening on the achievements of our retiring Chief Executive, Jed Curran. My colleague, Councillor Alan Bretus, will speak at greater length, but I'd like to put on record what a pleasure it has been to work with Jed. First as a cabinet member, and then as a new leader, I have been lucky to have his wise counsel and have been impressed by his passion, which I share, for improving public services. He's been of particular help to me during the COVID-19 pandemic, in which we've managed the council's response to the biggest health crisis in our history, while continuing to provide good services for our most vulnerable residents. His gentle good humour has transmitted itself throughout the organisation and helped make it a very pleasant place to work. And alongside the council's hard-working staff, he has ensured our borough is a much better place today than when he joined us 17 years ago. Merton has become a well-run, award-winning council. We've seen improvements across schools, leisure, and support for low-income families, while protecting services against austerity cuts. So on behalf of the people of Merton, we all wish Jed a relaxing and well-earned retirement with his family and hope he will look back on his time here with pride. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the motion has been seconded by Councillor Stringer?
I formally second it.
Okay. Can we agree the report then for the appointment of Hannah Doody as our new chief executive. Is that
Agreed.
agreed? Right, thank you. So I would now like to extend further the opportunity to speak in terms of about our retiring chief executive. I understand, thank you, Councillor Anderson, for starting the ball rolling with that, but can we move to Councillor Alan Brittis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. I think this is your first physical chairing of this council chamber. Now, I begin with a question. Why would this learned young lawyer from Lambeth called Jed Curran not join Merton in that glorious Hellenic year of 2004? Because it was in 2004 that Greece won the UEFA European Cup by thumping Portugal 1-0 in a show of exhilarating attacking football. And we hope, Jed, that as you leave, England do likewise and win the European Cup in 2021. Now, in that year, Greece also hosted the most successful Olympics in 2004. And I also want to inform this chamber of another reason why Jed joined us in 2004. Because 2004 was the year when the UN designated that year as the International Year of Rice. And we know that Jed can be fluffy and at times can get steamed up, but only inside. Never see the steam outside. And we welcome his judgment over the years, his superlative judgment on issues, on advice, on what to do next, what to do later, looking ahead, superlative judgment throughout those 17 years. But we also need to question that judgment sometimes, especially in the sporting arena. But I don't know anyone who's done this, because I understand Jed swapped supporting Manchester United to follow Crystal Palace. What's going on there? Where's the judgment? But seriously, this is what people have said about Jed in my record-breaking 10 years as leader with him as our CEO. There it is, 2010 to 2020. But I know it's not about me this year. I know it's not about my record-breaking 10 years. And I know you love those 10 years with me. They were the best 10 years. But I took the opportunity to go to every floor and just ask certain people just to give me a taste of what they thought of Jed Curran. Calm under pressure, was always there. Calmness. Dedicated to the cause, to the people, to the residents, to the businesses, to the organizations, to the charities. Thoughtful. Very rarely flustered, one said. Cool, a young member said. Cool. Supportive of his staff, in particular by a member of staff who has gone through the ranks and said that your door was always open, that you coached them, that you encouraged them, and they've been here and they've got in, stayed in, and got on. I wanted to thank you. And politically astute. Too politically astute, because he's always bloody fair. Fair to all the parties. And I do welcome that independence and that political fairness. But sometimes Jed has a tendency to jump the gun. Some years ago, his wife Sarah, who's here, with their son Tommy, who's a professional or a very good fencer, needs to be with his dad, keep his dad at bay. But some years ago, Sarah mentioned how much she liked Perry Como, the American crooner. What did Jed do? He quickly booked a holiday to Lake Como, and they've been going ever since. He misheard Sarah. Perry Como, he thought, she likes Como in Italy. And they've been going there ever since. Well done. It's worked out. At other times, Jed is so engrossed in his job, he forgets his environment in which he's in. He's so engrossed in his job. So one year, if you all recall, we had scaffolding all about this 16th floor building to change the windows. to go from Crittall windows, I understand, to the much better, nicer windows. And as you know, Jed is a great cyclist. He cycled into work, did what he normally does, started changing from his cycling clothes to his office clothes, and there were the workers on the scaffolding looking in on this CEO in his buff, half naked, and only realized at the last minute. Some forgetfulness there. But Jed, in closing, we will not forget you. We will not forget your dedication, your service to the residents in particular, to the businesses, to the charitable organizations, to the schools, to the young, to the elderly, and also to that piece of advice you gave me when I became leader about some of the things I did or said when I was in opposition. And you said the message that goes out is that it's a dysfunctional borough, and there's less trust in politicians. So I took that on board, and I know the opposition have taken that on board in our famous lunches with all the leaders. That's what comes across. Yes, guys, you may have your differences, but the people out there just want you to do what's best for the council. And I know you've done your best for us in the last 17 years. We will not forget you. You will be missed, and thank you for your service. Thank you.
Councillor McLean, I believe, is joining us remotely for now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome also to and it's your first semi-in-person full council meeting. But of course, a great thanks to you, Jed, for your many years of dedicated service to Merton. I regret not being able to be in the chamber tonight to celebrate your service, but only a few hours ago, I was advised as a precautionary measure to self-isolate by the NHS COVID app. I believe they call it being pinged. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Williams will be speaking on behalf of the Conservative group tonight in tribute to Jed's service. But I would like to add my personal thanks for his support and guidance, especially when I became leader of the opposition after being elected to the council for just 9 months. Support and guidance that was greatly appreciated. And of course, for his leadership through the COVID pandemic, both in Merton and as Gold Commander. Mr. Mayor, may I finish by simply wishing Jed all the very best wishes for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to your first in-person meeting, as it were. I just want to give very short thanks from my group to Jed, and my own personal thanks as well. 17 years is an awful long time to have to do meetings like this, so I'm pleased that we managed to cut this one short for you. I've always found with Jed that he's very generous with his time, and I particularly appreciated that during the COVID pandemic, where our regular conversations were not only fun, interesting, but they were really helpful to understand the issues and actually to allow my input when he definitely didn't need to. I must say, though, I don't know whether I'll miss or not, but the one statement, and Jed's gentle humour has always been referred to in his tact, but the one statement that he often said to me was that he feels the strength of my argument. Now, that was always whenever he had to politely disagree with something I was saying, but I appreciated the tact and I will miss you, but best of luck. Thank you.
Councillor Southgate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to your inaugural meeting. As we know, we are formally welcoming Hannah tonight as our new chief exec, and we look forward to working with her for many years to come. Although if she is to match the record of our retiring chief executive, Jed Curran, that's an impressive 17 years to go. So Jed arrived here in Merton in 2004 at a point in our borough's history when things were admittedly at a low ebb. Only recently elected, I had one constituent who delighted in reminding me that the Audit Commission rated Merton as a, quote, weak authority, meriting just 2 stars. It's easy to forget how everything was measured in those days. So Jed's first task was to set the ship on an even keel, which he did over the next 5 years. until we were judged to be improving strongly and awarded 4 stars. Then once we'd achieved the highest possible score, the incoming government promptly abolished the Audit Commission. Now, if I may be allowed a personal note of thanks, Jed's advice and support was enormously important to me when the Merton Park Independents held the balance of power after the 2006 local elections. I'd only served 1 term as a councillor then, so it was a great reassurance to have Jed there as a calm and authoritative source of advice. I do remember one thing he said in particular: you can do what you like, but just don't vote down the budget. And since then, I've always felt an obligation not to vote against the budget, even though our vote no longer makes a difference. So during those 2 minority administrations, first Conservative, then Labour, Jed worked very hard to build links between the political parties so that relationships between the leaders were good on the personal level, even if it did not always sound that way in the council chamber. And compared with some London boroughs, we do benefit from a civilised political culture between the parties here in Merton, and a willingness to work towards common goals where we can. Most of this, I think, we do owe to Jed and ways he's led the authority as its chief executive for the past 17 years. Jed, be assured you leave Merton in a much better state than you found it back in 2004. It's a legacy to be proud of. And our very best wishes to you, Sarah and Tommy, for your retirement. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my head seems to have disappeared. I'm not sure that. Well, maybe it might have been better not to have put my. Never mind. Mr. Mayor, 2 minutes to sum up 17 years of service as Chief Exec is insufficient. As Councillor Southgate's mentioned, in 2004, Merton was rated weak by the Audit Commission and in need of improvement. The then leader, Councillor Andrew Judge, and I agreed that we needed a new Chief Executive to drive change, and that had to come from new blood at the top of the CMT. Jed impressed the Appointments Committee in all tasks. A clear vision for the future, yet delivered in the tone of voice that we've all come to know: calm, clear, thoughtful, authoritative, and unflustered. I've seen marks of steely determination when frustrated, but never anger. Jed is controlled, but not controlling. He built a team of senior colleagues that lasted in place for about 10 years. Some, like Caroline and Chris, who worked with Jed at Lambeth, are still serving as directors. So the transformation of the workforce began. As head of paid service, we gave him the policies, business plan, and budget under Conservative and Labour administrations. Never enough resources at any time, whoever was in control at Westminster, 'twas ever thus. A mark of a good officer team is that opposition councillors blame the officers for implementing the wishes of the majority party. Merton is now recognised in London as having a capable team. It's up to the politicians how to use them. Jed's been a conciliator, encouraging the party leaders to cooperate outside the formal structure to get things done. His focus has always been on solutions and not on problems. For that, he has also made his mark in the local government community as a solid, reliable achiever. The Conservative group welcome Hannah Doody as our new Chief Executive, as Jed's successor. It will be, Hannah, a hard act to follow. You know that. When the chips are down and life gets tough, council leaders only have one person to confide in, the Chief Executive. So for 17 years of supporting 4 quite different leaders, Jed deserves a rest and for my group, we say thank you and enjoy your well-earned retirement.
Thank you, everyone. Jed, can I ask you to join me down in front of the dais?
Say that I do think I have made a difference to nursing. I do think that helps contribute to the significant improvements that have occurred. But those improvements have definitely been a team effort. The historians amongst us will remember Carlyle's idea that there was a great man theory of history, which was all down to it was man, an individual man to drive all the changes. That is simply not the case. The improvements in nursing happen because we've got great partners, we've got fantastic staff, we've got excellent managers, and we have outstanding counsel. And it's the combination, collaboration between all of those that gives us work to keep. That's the improvements that we've seen on the side that I've been in nursing. Members in particular have always been dedicated to think about what were the needs of residents, and to push all the time for continuous improvement in the council, so we improve the system. And it's been a pleasure and privilege to act as chief executive with such a group of members. And we are now going to see a further increase, further improvements in our services with the excellent appointment that you've made today in Hannah. She's going to be much better than that other chap, but he's great in the role, and I'm sure she will help continue on, because there are very significant challenges facing. We know that COVID has highlighted the inequalities that we were aware of anyway in the borough, but that need further attention. We know we have ambitions for housing in the borough, which will be difficult to realise. We face the global challenges of climate change, which we wish to respond to locally. All of those are enormously challenging. But I can't think of any authority that is better placed to represent the residents in fact than Merton, with all of the policies with our partners across. So if I may rather cheekily end with one particular wish, which fits a bit of a theme that has come out here. Whatever happens in the election next year, we will end up with a spread of excellent talent across all the benches. The challenges are enormous. Rising to those challenges will require drawing on all of the talents that sit across the chamber. And I do hope the council finds a way, it's not easy, to draw on all of those talents. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to serve as your chief executive, and thank you.
Thank you for all the contributions there. I think that there will be a great opportunity to welcome Hannah at our September meeting, but I have consulted with both Hannah and Jed and agreed that Jed could leave tonight, as he's actually on leave this week. So Hannah will be ably assisting me with your assistance as well in the chamber. Thank you. We move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public questions. You have a list in front of you of 35 questions from members of the public. Answers have been provided by the appropriate cabinet member. Each questioner was invited to notify the council in advance of the meeting if they wish to ask supplementary questions. I will call each person's name in turn. Please unmute your own microphone and please keep your supplementary question brief and not make it a statement. Firstly, Susan Grocott.
Thank you. So I noted in the response given to my question that proposals for the new infrastructure levy would be to cover affordable housing. So I'd like to ask, would the cabinet member agree that having funds directed specifically to affordable housing would help the council reach its own targets? That's something it's currently failing to do.
Thank you, Suzanne Grocott, for your supplementary answer. In terms of SIL money and affordable housing, the council welcomes any money that is available for affordable housing, but it is part of a planning bill, and we have major concerns about that because it will be the loss of democratic input, but also as well in terms of planning across Merton as a whole. We are aware it will bring extra additional income into the council. It's something that was introduced by the Labour Council, but that has to be also balanced alongside infrastructure needs here in Merton. Thank you.
Simon Jones.
Thank you. The answer given to my question indicates that Clarion's agreement must be sought to publish the transfer agreement under which council housing stock was transferred to Clarion in 2010. So I wish to ask, will the council seek Clarion's agreement to publish the transfer agreement, redacted as necessary to protect sensitive personal information, and report back on their response at the next full council meeting or one of the appropriate subcommittee meetings?
I'd like to thank Mr. Jones for his supplementary question. In terms of the transfer agreement, this council has no problem publishing, subject to the caveat in terms of confidentiality. Anyone is entitled to put in an FOI to request that agreement, and clearly, obviously, that would be considered as a council. But obviously, we would have to talk to Clarion in terms of any things that would have to be redacted. You know, this council is for transparency, you know, and I think if people want to see the transfer agreement, they should be able to. Thank you.
Emma Madison.
Less of a question than more of a clarification. Do I understand that the answer to my question means that the council has never taken formal enforcement action against any housing association?
I'd like to thank Emma Madison for her supplementary question. In terms of enforcement action, clearly there's obviously the social housing regulator, but if there is a complaint made about any terms of housing conditions, it will be fully investigated by our environmental health officers. I don't know whether any has been taken within the past, but clearly if there is things that do breach the housing law, they will be investigated and a response given. Thank you.
Alan Marries.
Sorry. I note that there were only 6 responses to the consultation on stage 2 of Merton's local plan from over 400 business premises in Wimbledon town centre, and there were no responses at all from the Weir Road and Plough Lane commercial areas. My question is, if this low level of response is considered acceptable for consultation on the important local plan, could the cabinet member please explain why has a much higher hurdle been set for the recent consultation on the neighbourhood forum?
I'd like to thank Mr. Marries for his supplementary answer. I think we will obviously be discussing the neighbourhood plan later this evening at Council, but one of the concerns is that the Business Improvement District, Love Wimbledon, represents all businesses within the Wimbledon Town Centre, and they have been voted in terms of being that representative body. There does need to be a synergy between business and residents for a neighbourhood for that hasn't been reached yet. But as I will say, I hope that going forward in the future that will be achieved. Thank you.
Robert Kennedy.
Good evening. In relation to my question about the Wimbledon Tennis Championships and Wimbledon car parking and close of Church Road, I asked about consultations. You said that the All England Lawn Tennis Club engaged with over 600 local residents prior to the council undertaking the traffic management order for the closures. You'll be aware there's an uproar amongst the community. My question, are you saying that the All England Lawn Tennis Club consultation counts as a London Borough of Merton consultation, which is what my question was about? And how were these 600 local residents selected from a much, much bigger population? Why didn't the All England Lawn Tennis Club or London Borough of Merton consult with the chairs of the local residents association and chair of the Friends of Wimbledon Park? Thank you.
Him for his supplementary answer. Clearly, they did consult with the 600 people. This is the first year that a closure has taken place. I believe it was right for that closure to have happened on Church Road in terms of making it a better space for pedestrians and cyclists. But clearly going forward, I think like any closure, we'll look at that for next year and make the necessary changes if needs be. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item 6, which is councillor questions to cabinet members. These have been published along with the responses from cabinet members. I will read out each member's name in order they appear on the agenda and invite you to ask your supplementary question. Please ensure all supplementary questions are brief and not a statement, and we will get through as many in the 15 minutes allocated. Firstly, councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the cabinet member for her reply, but also to just find out what are the financial implications of the increase in pupils with special education needs and disabilities, and what additional funding has the government provided to deal with this increase?
Thank you for your question and supplementary. The headline is that we've been having a huge increase in numbers, and the government's given an increase in the expectations of the support that we provide to children and young people and their families with special educational needs and disabilities, with nowhere near enough additional funding. So this is costing the council millions of pounds every year. It has to come out of our schools budget, and therefore it affects the funding that we have available for other education in schools. Thank you.
Councillor Adam Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I start by thanking the cabinet member for his response? Sadiq Khan's proposal to tax travel into Greater London will be a hammer blow to many local businesses. Does the cabinet member recognise this danger that it poses to local businesses? And will he join me tonight in condemning this attack to our local economy recovery? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bush. As some of you will be aware that over the last sort of 18 months, the national government has borrowed £299 billion. Simultaneously, the Bank of England have, through quantitative easing, created £340 billion, 330 which have gone into buying that debt. That's effectively creating money, right? Until there's the London shilling or the Merton shilling, the GLA and Merton will both have to work in a business-like way using the resources that they have and the balance in their books. The only way that we can offset the costs and encourage support and support our businesses is through direct support from national government. And therefore, if, as I believe is an honest question, he wants to support the businesses in Merton, I suggest that he speak to national government, or through his local MP speak to national government, to encourage further resources go to both Sadiq Khan and Merton to help them. Thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Skeet for her reply? It is fantastic that we have introduced so many measures here in Merton to improve working conditions for women, including introducing maternity cover for councillors. Does Councillor Skeet agree with me that it is terrible that Parliament does not do what Merton does? Will she write to Stella Creasy, the MP, who has been denied maternity cover by Parliament, to show that this council supports her on this important issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Sally Kenny, for your kind words. Yes, I'm happy to write to Stella Creasy to say that I'm 100% behind her. Thank you.
Councillor Bakari.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your answer. Considering that in the last 5 years, Merton only achieved 13% affordable housing, and that you learnt that building on small sites were too difficult to build on, as section 2.24 in the report states, what are your plans to ensure that future sites will allow for more affordable housing to be built?
I'd like to thank Councillor Bakari for her supplementary question. In terms of the overall figures, it has to be remembered that 90% of the sites have been 10 or less in Merton, which has come before planning. As a council, we do lack large sites here in Merton. As a council, we are doing a housing supply strategy, the draft of which is going to Cabinet next Monday. We'll also as well be looking at all council sites within the borough and identifying them for housing. Now, clearly, they do have to have 50% if they're council sites, but we'll be looking at all of them, and there will be a discussion. We do need to provide more housing here in Merton, and there are decisions which are imminent for this council. Thank you.
Councillor Curtin. Councillor Curtin, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the cabinet member update me on the work the council are doing to support carers in Merton?
Thank you, Councillor Curtin, for your question and your supplementary. And I think you raise a really important point in terms of the contribution of carers in Merton, including those who also rely on the services provided by the Dementia Hub, as per your original question. I'm delighted to tell you that we recently launched the carer strategy, and the Mayor launched that event. And at that meeting, we had two immediate announcements. The first is that we're increasing the discretionary grant for carers, and the second is that we're launching an emergency card for carers, which seeks to provide peace of mind should they be in an accident or fall ill. And we're also working with local businesses to provide discounts to carers in a similar way that we do for all key workers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Dehaney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I also thank the cabinet member for his response? But does he agree with me that given all that has been going on in people's lives during the pandemic and how incompetent the Home Office usually is, it is unfair on the government to put our residents at risk of losing their status in this country despite years of working here? And does he agree that it risks becoming a new Windrush scandal?
Well, can I thank him for his question and his supplementary question? And I think he's absolutely right. We know that there's a backlog of some 300,000 cases that are yet to be processed, but we also know that many more people are likely to have not applied due to the issues with the pandemic over the past year. And it's been estimated that there are around 130,000 people in receipt of benefits who haven't yet applied and face losing those benefits, and around 2,000 children in care or care leavers who haven't had applications done for them. So as the written response to the original question made clear, the council will continue to support the voluntary sector and residents in Merton to ensure that they have the support they need. But I really would urge the government to extend the deadline and ensure nobody loses their right to settled status due to the pandemic.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank the Cabinet member for her response. Mr. Mayor, I recently visited Mulberry College and learnt firsthand from the head teacher, as other members have too, just how vulnerable these young people are with debilitating and in some cases life-threatening illnesses, and how unsuitable the current premises are with a range of issues, including damp. I've read that officers believe that this is by far the best site and that alternative places already exist for the nursery children. This is one of those decisions that shows why we give up our time to be councillors, and it must be delivered for the sake of the children. And so I ask the Cabinet member whether she will seek a vote at the next full council so members across the chamber can unite to ensure this decision is delivered and that we can do the right thing for these kids in our medical education service who need us to support them now. You will certainly have the Conservative group's support.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for your question and for your follow-up. We are 100% committed to finding a suitable long-term home for the, as you say, the most vulnerable young people in Merton who are currently at medical education. We're very grateful for the feedback that we've had from the consultation. We take consultation seriously. We listen to what people say, and we do work off the back of that. So that's the work that we've been doing, is trying to find a solution that, as you say, does support these often teenagers with severe mental health problems to be somewhere that makes them feel respected, loved, and allows them to recover, at the same time as ensuring that we're fulfilling our duties of ensuring there's provision of early years education, particularly for those who are on lowest income. So I'm delighted that we're doing the work to relocate the service and ensure that no service has to close. We are able to do that ourselves. I don't think that needs to go to full council, but thank you very much for that idea.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Councillor, Mr. Mayor. I thank Councillor Skeet for her reply to my question. It is very impressive that we have continued to increase the amount of money going to the voluntary sector in spite of government cuts. Does she agree that the pandemic has shown more than ever the importance of local charities? And will she pass on our thanks to them for all that they do? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Yes, I will pass on everyone's thank you to our amazing charities. They have done so much good during the pandemic, especially for vulnerable residents, and I am very proud that they are receiving an increase in funding from the council next year. Thank you.
We are now on item 7, the strategic theme of sustainable communities, with a focus on housing and a special focus on decent homes and housing supply. We will begin with the councillor strategic theme questions, and I will follow the same procedure as the previous item. Firstly, Councillor Chong.
Councillor Chong, we can't hear you. We got interference. you want to put yourself on mute and try again, Councillor Chong? Still can't hear you. Can
But so let's move to Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the response. Although I wish I was on the chamber tonight to deliver this message. What an utterly pathetic and predictably weak answer. This is a failure of the Merton Labour Party and its MP. It was Councillor Judge who first tried to transfer the housing stock. Labour thought it a good idea, but it failed. The Conservatives tried and succeeded. Labour failed, Conservatives get things done. Labour have been running Merton Council for 11 years, and yet Councillor Allison still seeks to blame others. Does he not realise how ridiculous he now sounds? So I ask him, show some proper leadership, stand up for the residents of Eastfields, and fire the cabinet member responsible.
By tradition, I say thank you for the follow-up response, but this is testing traditions. I think after 11 years of Tory-led government, we've had so many problems with our housing, but my cabinet member is not one. I would like to thank my cabinet member for doing as much as he has done. As a result of his work, Merton has the lowest number of people living in temporary accommodation anywhere in London. Merton was 100% successful in getting homeless people off the streets in the Everyone In campaign. Now, this doesn't happen by accident. It happens thanks to the hard work and commitment and passion to help our communities of people like the cabinet member responsible. So I hope members will thank Councillor Welton for his hard work and lay the blame where it properly belongs with the government of this country for failing us on housing for too long. Thank you, Councillor Welton.
Councillor Stanford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I thank Councillor Welton for his response to my question. But will he provide an update in terms of the regeneration, as many of my residents have been asking about what's been happening in terms of the rebuilding of the estate? This is Eastfields, what I'm talking about, obviously. And I'm very concerned that they are losing faith in Clarion's ability to construct the new buildings to a high standard following their experiences with the dreadful repair and maintenance service that they have endured over the past few years. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Councillor Stanford for her supplementary and for all the work that she does on behalf of Figgs Marsh residents, along with Councillor Akingina and Councillor Brunt. I think she's quite right in terms of the regeneration. It was under this administration that outline planning permission was given for all three estates. Likewise, we have received detailed applications which have been passed for Ravensbury and for the first two stages in terms of High Path. In terms of Eastfields, Clarion haven't submitted their application. We're hopeful it will come shortly, but there'll also be as well a report in relation to regeneration coming to the September council meeting. We believe it was important that full council discusses these issues, and that will be brought forward. But we know that Eastfields estate does need to be regenerated and it does need to be redeveloped. And we are also looking at ways and means that it can be expedient, because everyone deserves to have a decent house. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gretton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I asked the Cabinet Member for Housing about his failure to demonstrate the 5-year housing land supply, which led very embarrassingly for this council and borough, our planning committee's decision to reject the Tesco Towers on Burlington Road being overturned. So given that, Has he failed to protect the residents of West Barnes against the predatory development? And has he failed to protect the integrity of our own planning committee? Will he apologise to the residents of West Barnes, and will he apologise to this council for the embarrassment and humiliation he has brought to our planning committee and its integrity? And will he offer his resignation tonight to this chamber?
I'd like to thank Councillor Gretton for his supplementary. The planning decision was approved by a planning inspector, and the Secretary of State could have had the right to have called that in. That Secretary of State is Robert Jenrick. The democratically elected committee in Merton refused this planning application. The Conservative Secretary of State overturned it. Under their planning reforms, residents would not even have a say in terms of that, and I think that would be a detrimental impact as well. So his questions really need to be directed towards Mr. Jenrick. Mr. Jenrick could have called this in like he has many other applications, and it's obviously making excuses for his Secretary of State, because he's the person who lays the blame for this one going through. And in terms of housing supply as well, we have had, in terms of the local plan, the sites plan for the next 5 years, that sets out in terms of homes within this borough, but we are aware of challenges in terms of supply, given the number of small sites that do exist here in Merton as well. There is a need to build more homes in the borough. That's something we want to see happen, and that is going to lead to challenges going forward. We have been told we have to deliver more homes. Jenrick even wanted us to deliver 1,400 homes. That thankfully is 900. It is a challenging housing target, but we know there's as well housing need in the borough, and it's time that the Conservatives accept that we do need to have more homes provided here in Merton, instead of having a NIMBY approach to every kind of development that comes before us. Thank you.
I'm going to return to Councillor Chung, who I understand is back online now without a filter on, hopefully.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the question is, can I congratulate the work of the cabinet member and the housing needs team for achieving the lowest in London? Although Merton has the lowest in London, what steps are being taken in ensuring people who are made homeless have temporary accommodation in the borough?
I'd like to thank Councillor Chung for his supplementary. That is why we have decided to join capital letters, which will help in terms of the procuring of accommodation close to people need. Although we have the lowest in London, which I am proud of, it's still 197 too many households here in Merton, but it's important that we find accommodation close to where people live and grow up. We have an excellent record in terms of TA, and I would also like to thank Steve Langley and his team for all the work they do, but we cannot be complacent going forward. This continues to be a challenge. There's 60,000 people in temporary accommodation in London, which shows the sheer scale of the task here across the capital city. So a lot done, but a lot more to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just point out that we're just over halfway through the 15 minutes, so we've only done a third of the questions. So if we could speed up the questioning and the answering, that'd be good. Councillor Coelher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Welton, for your answer. You've had a tough night tonight, so you'll be pleased to know that my plaudits don't stop there. The Virgin Active site has been inactive since 2018, and I congratulate you on your foresight in doing nothing for 2 years in anticipation of the pandemic that resulted in a third year of inactivity. Can you please explain why, in light of your failure to achieve more than 13% affordable housing during the current council term, you delayed so long, and why, given your answer, you are now proposing to sell the site on the open market rather than turn it into a community land trust, something I'd remind you your previous boss, Councillor Alan Breetis, promised to pursue at the Merton Citizens Hustings prior to the last local election? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Mr. Kohler, Councillor Kohler, for his supplementary answer. Part of the delay was in relation to this site as it was designated for leisure use. The redesignation had to be put through in terms of making this site into housing. It's something obviously we are committed to bringing forward in terms of options and in terms of disposable, but as Cabinet member, we are going to look at bringing the sites forward in terms of usage. But I will say to Council, in terms of the overall housing supply, all the housing sites combined would only supply 450 in the borough if all of them were developed, which does show the sheer scale of housing. But as I said earlier tonight, things will be coming forward in terms of housing in the borough shortly, and we will be taking a decision. The pandemic has had an impact. I think we have to recognise that, but we are obviously determined to build more homes as a council. Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to thank the Cabinet member for his reply. In Pallarsville, where I represent along with yourself and Councillor Monday, many have expressed concerns about overcrowded accommodation and are looking to be rehoused. Through the housing strategy, that steps will be taken to increase supply, including social homes for rent.
I'd like to thank Councillor Henry for her supplementary. And that's why we are bringing forward a housing supply strategy, which will open up that discussion about how to supply more homes. I think all of us are well aware of the number of overcrowding issues. To only have 194 nominations in the last year, 18 of those were 3-bedroomed homes, shows that the level of overcrowding, which does exist in the borough, and that is an issue in terms of the Eastfields estate and the other estates where overcrowding issues do need to be addressed and do need to be taken seriously. So as a council, we are determined to see an increase in supply, but it has been challenging given that the amount of money available for social housing has been slashed by the government since 2010. So it's something we are determined to deliver. Thank you.
Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet member for his reply. Let's be clear about the facts, Cabinet member. In November 2016, in this council chamber, you voted to reapply the Decent Homes Standard, and it was your job as a Cabinet member to enforce that. This is your failure. You should be apologising and not making weak excuses. Will you do the decent thing and resign?
In terms of Councillor Holden's strategy, in terms of the Decent Home Standards, we're obviously well aware of that. That was agreed by the council, but there has to be a level of housing brought up, and we have been very clear to Clarion Housing in terms of that. What I will say about the Conservative opposition, it's been no constructive things about how to find solutions. It's been negativity. As a borough, we stock transferred under 2010 when your lot were running the council, but clearly there is issues that do have to be actually addressed. We have been very clear, it will take a long time for those estates to be regenerated, but that housing does have to be improved in the interim as well, because people deserve to have a decent standard of living. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the time is now up for the 15 minutes of councillors' questions to Cabinet members. So please note the remaining questions and answers will be circulated after the meeting in line with the constitutional requirements. We're now going to deal with the strategic theme main report. I'm going to invite a Cabinet member to propose and then seek a seconder. I will then invite any members who wish to speak to the main report to do so. After that, I will take the motions and vote on them. Finally, we will then vote on the main report. Councillor Welcome, please present the strategic theme report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I formally move the strategic theme report. Housing is one of the biggest issues that faces here in Merton as a council. With over 9,000 people on the waiting list and less than 200 nominations last year, we know that supply is a huge challenge. As a borough, we have achieved many successes, including the lowest number in temporary accommodation in London at 197. in a city with over 60,000. Some boroughs in London have over 3,000. We have also successfully housed all rough sleepers during the pandemic. I would also like to pay a special tribute to the work of Steve Langley and his team. Steve announced that he will be retiring from the council after 47 years with us, and I think many of us owe him an enormous debt of gratitude for the work he has done and for achieving the lowest numbers of TA in London. Next week, Cabinet will be discussing the housing delivery strategy, which sets out steps as a council we can take to deliver more homes, given that we have been set a target to deliver over 900 homes a year. The major Clarion regeneration schemes will only deliver a quarter of our housing target, and it will require us to be bold and imaginative in our approach. There will also be an opportunity for all councillors to contribute to how we can deliver more homes, but also the challenges we face here in Merton. Unlike many other councils, we don't have any housing revenue account due to stock transfer in 2010. So we have been unable to access the grants that many councils in London have been able to do to build more homes. We are making representations to try and get the rules changed, but nevertheless, the current rules are constraint on our delivery. But as a council, Merton is looking at all sites across the borough to see which can be brought forward for development. And this will be subject to a cabinet report. And it will also be an opportunity to deliver more homes. We also hope that other public sector agencies, including the NHS, TfL and police, bring forward sites. We also know as well that we need to have more homes for social rent, given our housing waiting lists and those living in overcrowded accommodation. As a council, we have given permission, outlined permission for the £1.3 billion regeneration of the 3 estates. Further stages will be coming forward for planning permission later this year. And as someone who has seen the new housing for myself, it is very impressive and a vast improvement of what went before. As I said earlier, full report will be coming forward at the September council meeting on the estate regeneration, which will look at financing and delivering. The houses are in desperate need of replacement, and it's why rebuilding of the estates need to happen. We're all shocked by the recent report about properties in the Eastfields estate. Following the report, council environmental officers did make a visit to the estate and made a number of recommendations and actions. I take the issue with the utmost serious, and many tenants and leaseholders have been badly let down by Clarion, and it's clear that trust is lacking for many of them living on the estate. Everyone deserves to live in a decent home, and that must be at the forefront of our minds in addressing these serious concerns. I ask for your support and to reject the recommendation for amendment on the strategic objective report.
Thank you. This evening, we have a number of speakers who will be speaking remotely via Zoom. Councillors in the chamber may therefore formally move or second an item, and their proposal or seconder speech may be given by another member remotely. Any remote proposer of us in this scenario will also have the right of reply. So Councillor Stringer, I understand you're formally seconding.
Yes, that's correct. I formally second.
And Councillor Mundy is speaking. Okay, can I move to Councillor Mundy then to formally speak to second?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I welcome you in your new role and wish you well as you raise money on behalf of your chosen charities. I'd just like to say I'd like to formally second this report, but I'll reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Gretton.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to say it's great to see you and great to be back here, but I wanted to start by apologising to the hard-working officers of this council for the refusal of a Liberal Democrat group to move tonight's meeting to the earlier time of 5 o'clock. It was an absolute disgrace. They couldn't show the flexibility. Everybody else wanted to move it. And it's such a shame that Councillor Fairclough and Councillor Kohler could not muster the patriotic enthusiasm to get properly behind our national team tonight. And Councillor Bahari, the non-Merton GLA member. Mr. Mayor, on to the strategic report. And thank you to the excellent officers of this council for the very informative report. And as you'll see, the disasters of this Labour administration under Councillor Allison and Councillor Welton on housing are clear for us all to see. They spent millions, Mr. Mayor, on a housing company, Morantum, but didn't manage to build a single house. They forgot to put in place the required 5-year land supply for the borough's new homes, and as requested by Sadiq Khan, and because of that, they've ceded the entire control from the planning committee over to the National Planning Inspectorate. It's been an absolute disaster, Mr. Mayor. As for Eastfields, we've heard about that tonight. That's been a disaster. They've got a clear contract with Clarion to do all the repairs, but they haven't even bothered to read the contract. Just like the early contract, they haven't the first idea what they're doing, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we've seen in the report tonight, only 13% of homes in this borough are built that are affordable. And that's such a contrast with our Conservative government's record, building 500,000 new affordable homes in recent years and providing £4 billion for affordable homes across London, and the First Home scheme, which is coming in, providing discounts of £100,000 for new home buyers, helping them get on the property ladder. Mr. Mayor, this government is building about 250,000 new homes a year. That's 200,000 more than it was over 10 years ago under the previous Labour government, a long time ago. And soon the Prime Minister's target of 300,000 homes a year is going to be met. But it's the Conservative group, Mr. Mayor, that actually understands that we need proper communities if we're going to have successful housing. And that's why we were so ashamed when the £75 million investment was lost.
Thank you.
By this Labour administration.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gredden. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to seek clarification here because I understand there's now an amendment being put by the Liberal Democrats, but I want to check whether Councillor Mundy has his right to reply before the amendment's put, or he can do it at the end still. Okay, thank you. So Councillor McGrath, please move your amendment.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bailey is listed to speak on the report as a whole, separate from our amendment. So I'm just confirming that she's still listed to speak.
Oh, beg your pardon. Yes, Councillor Bailey first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers for this report, but can I just take a second to respond to Councillor Gretton and his assertions of inflexibility from the Liberal Democrats? It's interesting that you say that, considering the only reason we couldn't move is because we have jobs and children and responsibilities that we can't move within 48 hours notice. So it's really interesting that you think that's inflexible and that suddenly somehow makes us unpatriotic, when it seems that you guys are the ones who are prioritizing football over business of making sure that people have affordable homes. So please stop that. It's just silly and embarrassing for you. Anyway, the title of the report itself says its objective is to improve the condition of supply of housing, including affordable housing in Merton. The report then goes on to list all the things that we're not doing to achieve this, our own goal. The two main areas I'm going to mention, well, I hope you're not too distracted by watching the scores, is building more homes. So we need, according to the targets, we need 980 new homes a year. 50% affordable, and if we go on like this, it's practically impossible. And what's more, it just shows how unwilling the political leadership is to make any change. If you're talking about the sites of Moranton, but if Moranton couldn't build on them, how can any private developers? It's mentioned in the report that developers should make financial contributions in lieu of an affordable housing offer, but I don't know how this money is spent or what policy it should fall under, so perhaps Councillor Welton can clear that up for us. The report admits that since you've been aware of these issues since 2015, but 6 years later, there's not really much action. Are you not a bit embarrassed by that? I would be. Labour talk a good talk, but they wanted to rush this meeting in order to watch the Euros, and this is even more evidence that this administration does not really care about the state of the homes that our residents live in. Thank you.
Right. Councillor McGrath, would you like to move your amendment?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think it was a distinguished former councillor of this council, Mrs. May, who said the Tories needed to stop being seen as a nasty party, and how right she was. Mr. Mayor, this is a very simple motion. It's about something that everyone on this council knows is a real problem. Our failure to ensure that enough affordable homes are being built. It's something that we all hear about from residents. So how does this report address the issue? It doesn't. The figure of 13% is profoundly depressing. And worse, it's exactly the same figure as in 2016-17. There's been no progress. In what I can only describe as a risible attempt to disguise the 13%, a new metric has been invented: the percentage of affordable housing in developments which have affordable housing. Mr. Mayor, I'm proud to announce that on exactly the same basis, the Lib Dems have won 60% of the councillors in the wards which have Lib Dem councillors. It's an absurd statistic, and they should really not be trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. Mr. Mayor, we all know that residents want to work together to solve the borough's problems. So what we're proposing is that the Cabinet should come up with a plan for how we can actually get some more affordable homes. Now, I was pleased to hear from Councillor Welton that they are coming up with a plan, and therefore there is absolutely no reason why the Labour group can't vote for this amendment. But we haven't got it yet. One of the things we need to talk about is the sites that the council own. People are completely baffled by why the council hasn't come up with a plan for the sites owned by Morantum, for Virgin Gym, and for some of the other sites. We need a plan, and we need it soon. We've got nearly 10,000 people on the housing list, and those people need affordable homes. We also need a plan which includes the £1.4 million the council has collected from small sites in lieu of affordable housing over the last 5 years, none of which has been spent as far as we can find out, nor is there any plan for spending it. Now, we started off with a different version of this motion, which was very critical of the Labour group, but we decided to change it for the simple reason that we actually want to try and achieve something with this motion and have something that everyone can agree on. Come back to this council by November, and if you can come back earlier, all the better, with a plan for how we're going to deal with this problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The amendment is being seconded by Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Gretton for raising the subject of flexibility on moving the meeting. Of course, we did suggest that this meeting would be moved to another day, but apparently that wasn't possible, although no reason was given. We're all for football coming home, but we need homes, roofs above our own head first. Mr. Mayor, Councillor McGrath has outlined the nature of our simple amendment. What I'd like to do is to ask the administration councillors a broader question. A question about whether they are happy with things how they are. Put simply, 13% of affordable housing since 2018. Is it good enough? 9,000 on the waiting list. If it's not, Mr. Mayor, then I'd suggest that some sort of a change is needed. So whether this amendment passes or is voted down, I want the administration councillors to think about what they can do. Building enough housing, and specifically affordable housing, is a national problem. The problems Merton faces, and it's not to doubt that we face some specific difficulties as set out in the strategic theme report. Well, they were identified back in 2015. Now, back in 2011, the then Cabinet Member for Housing told the local paper, Merton is crying out for more affordable homes. A lot of developers will try and get around it, but Merton means business when it says we want 40%. Indeed, Councillor Welton, indeed. And yet even tonight, things are just being kicked down the line. Councillor Bakari asked the Cabinet Member about the plans for council-owned sites, and the only answer is that they're looking at options. To Councillor Kohler's question on a specific site, COVID's blamed. And we can't leave it to the government. Their solution is just removing local control. Increasing permitted development rights just leaves us with inappropriately converted offices or buildings on industrial estates, or extra stories shoved on top of blocks. There aren't any silver bullets, but there are things that Merton can do. It involves creativity and partnership. Indeed, being bold and imaginative, as Councillor Welton said. We need drive to do the right thing. So what could a new plan involve, Mr. Mayor? Well, we could start with the use of SIL contributions in lieu of affordable housing. How and where can that be used? I've asked multiple times in multiple meetings, and the answer is never hugely clear. We could look at empty homes, for example, and pushing the owners of sites where they've got permission and they aren't acting, like Manu Plastics in my own ward, empty for more than a decade. Council-owned sites, Moranton-inspired plans could be looked at. Councillor Stanford mentioned the estates regeneration. I'm pleased that Councillor Welton agreed that it does need to be regenerated. I mean, gosh. As the administration, the shape of the plan is within your gift, but it starts by recognising that we need a change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. I have no other speakers indicated they wish to speak. So can I invite Councillor Mundy, if he would like to use his right to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So despite the picture the Lib Dems Conservative opposition has painted, the challenge of building more affordable and social homes is not unique to Merton. I turn colleagues' attention to paragraph 2.5 in this report. Across the country, we as a nation are not providing enough affordable and social rented homes to meet demand. After 11 years of successive Conservative administration, England is now building around 30,000 fewer social rented homes a year than we were in 2010. This, as we know, puts pressure on existing stocks and raises market prices. We know that the average house price is now 8 times average earnings. Mr. Mayor, in terms of house building in general, paragraph 2.8 of this report makes clear Merton is successful in delivering its share of London's new homes. We'll be asked to build over 900 new homes a year in Mayor's new London plan, and regeneration of our current estates in Hyde Park, Eastfields, Phipsbridge, Pollards Hill, amongst many, many others, most which was built in the 1960s, is an opportunity we cannot miss, and we've already heard that as such by the Cabinet member. Mr. Mayor, I want to turn to the issue of decent homes and the particular issue of Eastfields. I, like everyone who has seen the ITV report and social media reports, were appalled at the conditions our residents have been forced to live in by the UK's largest housing association, Clarion. As chair of the Sustainable Communities panel, I called in Clarion to our meeting on the 24th of June, told them to answer our questions. We heard many promises and will be having Clarion back at every meeting between now and February 2022 to see if those promises turn into actions. Members of the cross-party panel agreed to build on existing steps taken by a Cabinet member to deliver a one-stop shop informing residents of their rights, providing a single source of information on Clarion's performance, and the list, as set out in precedent by my panel, the list of current open repair cases so that everyone can see the issues that still need to be addressed. The issue of disrepair in East of the state is not a political football to hear about, but a serious one.
You have a minute remaining.
Our Cabinet member to put pressure on Clarion to meet their legal and moral requirements to provide a safe, clean homes for our residents. I commend this report to Council.
Thank you. Councillor Welton, would you wish to use your right to reply?
I'd like to obviously make a very brief right of reply to the motion and to the amendment. The reason obviously we can't support the amendment is because we're already bringing forward something next week in terms of housing supply, and that report will come later this year to Cabinet, setting out what we plan to do, but also as well looking at the sites. So this is already in train. It's already coming forward. We need to deliver more affordable homes in this borough, but we do have constraints as well. So obviously I ask that this amendment is rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now call on a vote on the amendment, but for those members at home remotely first. Please, can you select on your screens either for, against, or not voting? Councillor Stanford, could I have your vote, please?
Okay, sorry. Am I unmuted yet? Yes, I am.
You're unmuted, yes.
Yes.
For, against, or not voting?
Against.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes.
Apologies for the interruption. It appears, I don't know if colleagues across remotely is getting this too, there are 2 questions being posted. So for a point of clarity, can we confirm that the
first question that's on the screen there?
Yeah, but
for,
you need
against,
to
or not voting.
You only do one question.
Yeah, but you need to select both options in order to submit. So can we have confirmation that selecting any question on the second option is null and void?
Yes. This is just the amendment, so it's the first one.
You cannot, Mr. Mayor, with respect, you cannot do that. You try to submit, but you need to answer both questions, it appears.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but it's saying you need to answer both. So should we say answer both?
May I suggest just selecting option 1 on the untitled questions, and then how you want to vote, and then it should be.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, it's now gone from my screen. I've got.
Yeah, no vote available.
Okay. Can I take the?
Yeah. Okay, that is back again.
Can I take a vote in the room then? Either those members voting for the amendment. Those against? and those not voting? This is the amendment for those in the room. I'm taking now the vote.
Which amendment is this? Is amendment 7B and the recommendation about
The Liberal Democrat amendment that is on the screen. I beg your pardon, I will try that one again. So can I take those voting for the Liberal Democrat amendment? Have that. Those against? Okay, thank you. And not voting? It's me. So I have 13 for, 15 against, 1 not voting. So the amendment is lost. I think that we need to work behind the scenes to try and get the vote sorted. Is that now agreed? Is it the main report as which without amendment, is that agreed, or do we take a vote on that?
Agreed.
There were 13 for, 15 against, 1 not voting. It's now done. Oh, so we have, if you see on the screen, there were, I'm not clear that I understand that. So given that we've got the vote of those in the chamber, that's what counts in terms of the attendance at the meeting. We'll try and work out some subsequent votes to make sure that it's swifter for the home voting, but.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's quite disgraceful that members who are at home have been denied the opportunity to participate in this vote because of the abject failure of Merton technology.
Right. Can we now take those then at home? Can I take your vote on the amendment, either for, against, or not voting? You have it on your screen now. Please indicate your vote. And Councillor Stanford, is yours the same? No, this is still the amendment.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, I'm here now.
This is on the amendment still. You voted against last time. I'm asking you, it's the same.
So this is for the report, the main report.
No, this is still the amendment, the Liberal Democrat amendment. The vote failed online last time, so.
Oh, right. Well, no, I did give it last time, but I'll give it again. It was against the amendment.
Right, the votes are displayed on the screen in front of you. And the numbers are for 13, against 15, none not voting. So the amendment fails. But I would remind those members at home that their vote is an indicative vote because it's the votes of those in the chamber that count. So no one's been disenfranchised because they're not here, because they're not part of the meeting, although observing and participating in debate. The amendment fails, so I now call on a vote on the original recommendations. Members, is that agreed? It's agreed, okay. Okay, in that case, before taking the vote in the room, can we have a vote of those at home on whether they're for the substantive report, against, or not voting?
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Stanford. I'm for the for.
Thank you. That's the vote now is being displayed on the screen. The actual numbers are 425 against 4. Can I take a vote of those in the chamber, please? Will you, those who are in voting for? Those against? Not voting. The votes in the chamber are 425 against 3, 1 not voting. So the motion is passed. The report is agreed. Strategic theme motion, moving on to 7C. We will now consider this motion. Councillor Fairclough, please present the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Living in a decent home is the most basic of liberties. It's hard to live a life as you choose if you're worried about the roof over your head. Now, about 40% of our residents live in either private rented accommodation or some form of affordable housing. And many of those people have no idea about how or where they can get help if they need it. Generation Rent recently found that less than 1 in 5 renters knew anything about their rights when it came to their homes. Now, local authorities do have legal powers to take action against rogue landlords, but more importantly, they have a moral duty to do so and to go further. We've already heard Councillor Bailey's summary of the report put before us. It tells us a lot about what the administration isn't doing, but not very much about what they are doing or indeed what they plan to do. Same for the Cabinet member's reply to Councillor Bailey's questions on selective licensing, and also his replies to those questions from the public, from Emma Madison, Matthew Willis, Susie Hicks and Simon Jones on various aspects of support for renters and tenants, where his response is to evade or give no detail. So we can make it easier. And I'm pleased to say tonight the administration seemed to have done so in a rather confusing way. We can learn from others. Like Merton, Richmond Council transferred its housing stock. But unlike Merton, it recognised that there wouldn't be much oversight and acknowledged its moral duty to fix that. So they set up the Tenants Champion Scheme, a way of supporting housing association tenants and leaseholders where there were serious problems, signposting them to information, mediating disputes if necessary, and taking a strategic look at the issues affecting their residents, like their recent review into communications between landlord and tenants. Provides focus, someone who's actually looking at the issues, gaining expertise and experience in helping people out. And this has been going for 10 years. All of what we've heard tonight is how it's also difficult for Merton. Now, we could be radical and try out this new idea here. And as I say, I'm pleased to say the administration amendments suggest they will do just that. We might even call that proactive, which is what it says in the report you are, although you hadn't thought of this idea before then, even though you were investigating all the options, according to the Cabinet member's reply to Councillor Bailey, all the options, but rejecting this one. So we're sort of slightly confused how this afternoon at about 3 o'clock, the Cabinet member was opposed to this idea, and at 5 or 6 o'clock this afternoon, the administration is in favour of it. Mr. Mayor, we're very pleased that the administration is going to support it, even though with their amendment. Thank you very much.
The motion is being seconded by Councillor Bakari.
I formally second and reserve the right to reply.
Bembo.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion by the Liberal to establish establish tennis champion service is a worthy idea. However, beyond mentioning that they wish to copy Richmond and 1 year we have not been given any details on how this was operate. It is a pity that the Liberal Democrats have not heard the discussions with the officers to work out how the service would function in this fall, or provided any estimate of the cost of establishing the service, or how much over the time it was take up, or how many restaurants they expect to help. Therefore, the Conservative will be abstaining on this item. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have not had any other speakers wishing to indicate they wish to speak. So, Councillor Bakari, would you like to use your right to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to begin with, I'm just a bit confused by the Tory approach at the moment, because one moment they're saying that Councillor Welton needs to resign, and then the next minute they're voting for the report. So it's just a little bit strange. So you're not supporting a tenant champion because you don't know how it works. Well, that essentially is what the job of the Merton Council officers will be, to make sure that they follow the example of other councils that have done this. So it seems like a really odd approach again. But as we've heard from other speakers about this, today we've realised that today we do need a tenant champion, partly because we have had an increasing number of residents who rent in Merton, and we must help these tenants deal with rogue landlords. And having a tenant champion will do just that, because it's the moral thing to do. It's the right thing to do. But there's also another angle here. As a councillor in a ward that has a proud sense of community, many residents are worried about how tenants have less incentive to be part of the local area or take pride in the property they live in, essentially because they don't own that property. And we need landlords who, when they rent out properties, ensure that the property is looked after, both by the renter and by themselves. I've also heard from residents who have to deal with damp in the property because of a tenant has a landlord that won't fix a faulty plumbing issue, for example. Now, rogue landlords don't just make life difficult for their tenants, they also make life awful for the residents who live next door to them. So this is a community issue as well. A tenant champion will help our residents and promote neighbourly behaviour and community spirit. And that's what we want to see in Merton. So I thank the Labour group for accepting our idea for a tenant champion. The amendment doesn't really add to it other than just being an administrative point. So we're not really sure what the amendment was doing to improve or change the motion, but we are very pleased that you like our idea. Thank you.
Councillor Welton, please will you move your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in terms of the amendment, we are suggesting obviously a very minor change to it, that it reports to the Sustainable Communities panel, which I think is the best body in terms of scrutinising how things work as tenants champion. It's important to actually see how it actually works going forward, and to see the success or not of it. So that will give us a chance to see. But Councillor Nick Draper has considerable experience in terms of housing, having been cabinet member for 4 years. I know he's passionate about the subject, and I know he will be very diligent in terms of this role. So I ask that this amendment is approved. Thank you.
Councillor, the amendment's been seconded by Councillor Stringer, formally, I understand.
Yes, that's right, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Draper is going to speak. Councillor Draper. Councillor Draper. Are you on mute? Right.
Unmute. Here we go. Can you hear me now? I'm so sorry about that, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for letting me speak. Now, I'm really not bothered about whose idea was this in the first place. I'm very glad to accept the function of tenants champion. Tenants need a voice, not just people who just stump tables and blame the council. Because tenants know any idiot can do that, and as evidenced by this meeting, they do. But it doesn't help anybody, least of all tenants or prospective tenants. What I hope to do is to provide genuine help, or at least a genuine voice to those who need it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Can I ask the proposer and seconder if they accept the amendment or whether we need to put the amendment to the vote? Do you accept the amendment?
We don't accept the amendment, we'll abstain on the amendment.
Okay, in that case, we need to move to a vote on the amendment. So I have no other speakers. Councillor Fairclough, you have your right to reply.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank Councillor Bembo for his contribution. I think he's setting the Conservative group a very high bar for their own motions coming through. We expect fully worked through policies and plans seen by the officers and signed off. So we'll be looking forward to those. As I said, Mr. Mayor, we're pleased, but we are surprised by the reaction of the cabinet member in an answer to a question about this, where he said no, absolutely no possible way. And then a couple of hours later, the Labour group is all for it. And in fact, Councillor Draper is really looking forward to it, and we wish him well in that. This suggests to me that the cabinet member is not fully in charge of his brief. I think that's quite simple, quite straightforward. Now, there was outrage and surprise when ITV showed the state of some of people's homes on the Eastfields estate. And sitting in a scrutiny meeting here on this seat a couple of weeks ago, I couldn't believe it when I asked what the council had been doing about repairs, and there wasn't really an answer. A letter sent to Clarion by the cabinet member on the day of that meeting asked the most basic questions that I couldn't imagine any cabinet member worth his or her salt wouldn't already know. And yet, just over a year before, at the same scrutiny panel, we'd heard from Clarion tenants about the problems getting repairs at Eastfields. There was a working group set up. All councillors were talking about regular problems and difficulties getting action. And even those of us without housing association estates know how difficult it can be to get housing associations to do things. We already knew the situation, but what were we doing about it? Now, Councillor Mundy is keen to make some changes that will ensure Clarion's performance is monitored. We welcome that, but we need to support people in their individual problems. A former cabinet member for housing told us that things had improved a bit when he personally kept up the pressure on the housing association. I'm pleased to say that former cabinet member is now the tenants champion. But the logic of that, Mr. Mayor, is that if things have got worse since he stopped being cabinet member, then presumably it's because subsequent cabinet members aren't doing that. Mr. Mayor, sorry, I do think we've heard enough. If 13% affordable housing in 5 years isn't enough, we need a cabinet member who actually knows what's going on in his area of responsibility.
Thank you. Right. I will now call for a vote on the amendment. So those councillors who are attending on Zoom, can you please indicate on your screen either for, against, or not voting? Councillor Stanford, could I have your vote, please?
This is for the amendment, yes?
Labour amendment, yes.
Labour amendment, yes, 4.
The online vote is 17 for, 12 not voting. 0 against. Those in the room, please, can I have your votes either for the amendment, so for rather, against, not voting. So the votes of those present are.
Mr. Mayor, sorry,
Yes.
it's Councillor Campus
Yes.
speaking. I
Yes.
don't seem to be able to get the poll up.
Right, I'm sorry to hear that, but the vote has now closed on that one, and it was 17 for, 0 against, 12 not voting. So it was an indicative vote for those councillors at home, so I'm going to move on and announce the vote of those in the chamber. Thank you, those councillors.
Right, okay.
17 for, none against, 12 not voting. Thank you. So the motion, the amendment now becomes, it's now amended, it becomes the substantive. Is that agreed? Okay, can we then vote again? I'll go to the members at home. It's the motion as amended, either for, against, or not voting. Don't. But I heard some said not voting. They said not agreed. They want to vote.
It is not agreed.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, do you want me to vote now, or
Yes, please.
or not?
Thank you.
For the substantive, yes, agreed.
Thank you. So those voting from home, it's 22 for, 9 not voting, 0 against. Those in the room here, please, can I have those indicating they are for the motion as amended? Those against? And those not voting? So those present in the room is 20 for, against, 0, 9 not voting. So that is now agreed as the motion. I'm going to move on to item 8, but before I do that, I just want to pass one comment I didn't raise at the time. We can say what we like about other councillors, either on our own side or other side, but please, I do not wish to hear any member of this council saying that staff are incompetent. And I don't want to hear that again. Thank you. Item 8, Morden Community Forum. Councillor Cowper, will you formally recommend this report to the council? Councillor Cowper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would formally like to recommend this. I'm really in favour of more education in Cannon Hill, especially for children with autism, either minor or more so. As I think anybody who has an autistic child or grandchild will tell you they need as much support as possible. And unfortunately, at the moment, Merton doesn't have enough.
You have a minute remaining.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, yes. Merton doesn't have enough they don't enough room for them at all, and it's costing the council too much. So I'll leave it there. But that is my that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Cowper. Item 9, the Mitcham Community Forum. Councillor Chung, would you formally recommend this report to the council? Councillor Chung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can formally recommend this report to the council.
Thank you. Item 10, the Wimbledon Community Forum. Councillor Home.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I'm moving this report reporting this evening on 2 meetings of the Community Forum, the second one chaired by Councillor Holden. Across the 2 meetings, we looked at COVID, climate change, boundary commission, census, and a number of other items. I would just like to draw to the attention of the council that these 2 meetings, by offering the opportunity and really pushing the opportunity for online attendance, my understanding after quite a few years chairing this forum is I think these were the 2 best attended meetings in terms of those attending on YouTube and Zoom. So I just wanted to draw that good piece of news to the attention of the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item 11, Rains Park Community Forum. Councillor Omar Bush, would you formally move the report to the council?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I formally move the report. The first meeting was chaired by myself, the second by Councillor McLean. As mentioned by James, we had very similar themes. We spoke about the Boundary Commission, COVID, and both meetings were very well attended.
Okay, thank you. We now move to item 12 on the agenda, which is a Liberal Democrat motion. Councillor Bakari, please can you move the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because of the war in South Sudan, Onjay, a science degree graduate, couldn't return home. For 8 years, he could not work, a human right, simply because he was an asylum seeker. Luckily, he got help from Merton citizens. He's now a science teacher and helping the Refugee Action campaign to lift the ban on asylum seekers working in the UK. But Onjay's not alone. Sadly, Merton citizens are relied upon in this borough to support this incredibly vulnerable group. Often the Aspen cards that store the allocated funds for the asylum seekers do not work and leaving families penniless. Their lives are full of uncertainty and often temporary accommodation, which can vary, provide incredibly poor quality food, often inedible, resulting in children refusing to eat and increasing their trauma. So this is why on the 18th of November last year, I asked Councillor Skeet to support publicly the Lift the Ban campaign, because since February 2020, when Merton Council passed a resolution to become a borough sanctuary, they hadn't. Merton Council could have contacted Refugee Action and Asylum Matters, but they haven't. And unlike Lewisham Council, who were working with local groups and getting a manifesto, regularly meeting, having plans, working to be accredited borough of sanctuary, Merton could have done the same. So I wrote to Councillor Skeet 3 times if we could work together, do a joint motion with all parties, and I never got a reply. After hearing about the decision to make a public statement to be considered in the Cabinet, I then copied Councillor Allison asking again for a joint motion. He did reply. And he said, we know that the Tories are opposed and we didn't want to make it a debate or to amplify the anti-refugee agenda in a council meeting, but I don't think there's any harm in asking the Tories, you never know. He continued, this has been a cabinet initiative led by Marcy and is one of the policies I asked her to introduce to avoid the issue becoming a political football. She has not worked on this jointly with anyone other than our brilliant council staff. And it will be really good recognition for her to be able to announce it at Cabinet next week. And I know you want to pass on your thanks. So I do thank Councillor Skeet for her statement. And I hope my encouragement helped and that you will support the campaign to lift the ban. But to make sure this is meaningful, you must work with people willing to make this happen too. I said on the 14th of June, copying in council officers, and I quote, I am keen to meet Councillor Skeet to work together on this. I implore you, will you work with me? Refugee Action and Asylum Matters have now contacted you. So now it's time for action and not words. Let's get a plan. Let's actually become a borough of sanctuary. Let's focus on the asylum seekers and let's agree this motion together. Thank you.
This is being seconded by Councillor Fairclough, but I understand deferring to Councillor Gould to speak.
Formally seconding, and yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
I'm pleased to be seconding this motion tonight and debate this issue publicly, shining a light on the injustices brought by this policy and so many people's lives. As Councillor Bakari pointed out, we all have a resolution.
Councillor Gould, could you slow down a bit? The microphone is not that clear from your side.
Can't hear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We all passed a resolution to become a borough of sanctuary.
We can't hear.
Councillor Gould, we just can't distinguish what you're saying, really. Can I maybe move to Councillor Barlow first, and you can look at your microphone on your side.
Mr. Mayor, once again, we have a motion from the Liberal Democrats that does nothing to scrutinise the work of this council. The wording of their motion gives the game away. They want to debate this publicly so they can challenge any attitudes that they themselves judge to be anti-refugee or anti-migrant. No doubt to then take to social media to make all sorts of claims from their lofty position of outrage. I am sorry to disappoint them and it seems the Labour group, but they won't find any of those attitudes here. The UK has a proud tradition of providing a place of safety for refugees. Those seeking asylum can and do make a positive, valuable contribution. This motion certainly does not. It simply agrees with something that the council has already done and asks them to write to our MPs, which they have already done. I can't speak for the MP for Mitcham and Morden, but our Wimbledon MP is already committed to writing to the Home Secretary on this issue. So apart from providing something to put on a leaflet for whichever high office one of them decides to run for next, this motion does nothing to help the residents of this borough and does nothing to help refugees or those seeking asylum. The Conservative group won't be having any part in it, and we will continue to take that position every time the Liberal Democrats bring forward a motion which can have no practical impact on this council. Now, we await the usual high and mighty Liberal Democrat response, expressing their disappointment that we dare to make political points in response to their obviously politically motivated motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gould, I'm going to ask you to make one more attempt and then move on if we can't hear you.
Apologies, unless you can hear me now, I'm so sorry.
We can't, I'm afraid. I'm going to move on to the Labour amendment. You, as the seconder, you do have the right to reserve your right to speak, so we'll consider you've not spoken yet. But Councillor Stringer, please move your amendment.
I'm moving it from here, and I believe the Councillor Skeet is speaking on my behalf. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Skeet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am very proud to have been the cabinet member to sign up for the Lift the Ban coalition. It was one of the first things the leader asked me to do, and I promised I would deliver. I would also like to thank our officers, especially Everett Willis, for their work on this, and the Merton Citizens and Citizens UK who also helped. I am passionate about this issue. The UK should be a safe place for anyone who is forced to flee their home because of violence or persecution. I know myself that this is not easy to leave your home and come to this country. It takes courage, but it also shows that you think Britain is a great country. Therefore, we should not make life so difficult for those who need asylum here. Therefore, we should not as it stands, the rules mean that they are denied basic right to work. I think this is wrong. People want to work. Work gives them self-esteem and means they can contribute to the country's economy. Being denied the right to work is punitive and financially crippling. but it is not good for this country's economic either. So I'm proud that the council has joined the Lift the Ban coalition. We have written to our MP to ask to join the country, putting huge pressure on the government to lift the ban. They must do the right thing and give asylum seekers the right to work. I support the council for this action and I move our amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. The amendment is being seconded by Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the amendment and I pay tribute to my amazing Cabinet Member for Women and Equalities, Councillor Skeet. I asked her to sign the council up to lift the ban, and she has done so. Lift the ban will allow people who have been through terrible experiences to play a full role in our community through work. Work gives you self-esteem, but it also gives you financial security, dignity, and to contribute to our great community here in Merton. These are my values, and these are the values of my administration. And that is why I asked Councillor Skeet to sign the council up to lift the ban. People escaping oppression and violence in their home countries should not be used as a political football. Nobody likes football more than me. They should not be used as a political football. I just wanted to get it done, and we got it done. It was my judgment that if other parties had been involved, the issue would have been hijacked for political advantage. And the fact that this motion has been tabled and the tone in which it has been debated suggests I was right. Yes, we did this. Yes, we did it on our own. The Liberal Democrats can claim no credit whatsoever. We even have already written to our MPs, as been discussed, about this on our own. But we acted because it was the right thing to do. Escaping oppression should not be a political game. Our amendment takes actually the politics out of this motion, as well as making it factually correct. So let us all be proud that Merton Council has joined the Lift the Ban Coalition. Let us all thank Marcy for getting it done, and let us all support this amendment and support our refugees.
Thank you. Councillor Gould, I'm going to try one last time to see if you can speak. No, it's not going to work. I'm going to defer to, you were speaking on behalf of Councillor Fairclough. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Fairclough?
I'm happy to formally just second it.
Right, thank you. If there are no further speakers, Councillor Bakari, do you wish to use your right to reply?
Yes, I do. I was asked by Merton citizens to do a joint motion, and so was every councillor here. I mean, we've approached by Merton citizens to take part in a online event where they talked about asylum seekers, and at that online event where there were Conservative members, we were all asked if we could all work together. I'm not doing this as a political football. I'm doing this because I was asked to do this. And I'm really upset that you're actually saying that, because I'm really passionate about this. I really care about some of these people personally. I'm really pleased that we're going to do this, because that's what matters. Lift the ban is a terrible infliction on some people who deserve the right, like a human right, as I said, to work. And Merton citizens are working incredibly hard right now with some families who are in desperate need, and we need to be focusing on them. If we had known that you had written to the MPs and that you were doing this work, we wouldn't have to be in this situation right now. The point is that I never got a reply. I've been asking if I can work with you because I'm doing this work anyway. Why can't we work together? And when I asked Councillor Skeet, can we work together? She didn't reply. Why didn't she reply? I don't understand this. I don't understand why you're making this into such a big deal. All I wanted was a cross-party approach. That's what Merton citizens asked me to do. So I'm really disappointed that you're making this into a political point, actually. But let's just focus on the asylum seekers. Let's make sure that we focus on them, because people are watching this right now and they prefer political parties to work together for these groups of people, particularly asylum seekers who are in a desperate need. And that's what we should be doing, working together. And whatever has been said today in this room, Councillor Skeete, I'm really happy to work with you.
Councillor. I'll now call for a vote on the amendment, Labour amendment. Those with your voting remotely at home, can you please select on your screens either for, against, or not voting? Councillor Stanford.
I'm here, Councillor Brunt. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
Can
so
you hear me?
this is,
Yes, yeah,
you're
yeah, you
voting
have.
on the Labour amendment, either for, against, or not voting.
For.
Thank you. For those voting remotely, it's 17 for, 13 against. Can I take the vote of those in the room? Those who are for the amendment. Those against the amendment. Those not voting. In the chamber here, 17 for, 12 not voting. Thank you. As it's now amended and that becomes the resolution.
Point of order.
Can I just ask, as
order.
no one has voted against, is that agreed?
Not agreed. Not agreed. We go to
Okay,
the vote.
so the substantive motion is now put as amended. Those at home, can you indicate whether you're voting for, against, or not voting?
Mr. Mayor, it's Geraldine.
Yes.
Voting for.
Thank you. For those voting from home, I have 21 for, 10 not voting. In the room here, please, in the chamber, those for the amended. Those against? Those not voting? Thank you. In the chamber, 24, 0 against, 9 not voting. Thank you. That is now, the substantive motion is now passed. I think we move on to item 13 now. Yes. Councillor Pritchard, please move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 23rd of June 1944, the men of the 3rd Battalion, the Fiji Infantry Regiment, were sent on a daring raid deep into enemy territory. During the battle, and after having already recovered 2 fallen comrades, Corporal Zephaniah Sukanavalu volunteered to go alone through heavy fire to save another. As he did so, he was shot and wounded. On realizing his men would not withdraw while he was still alive, Sukanavalu raised himself up in front of a Japanese machine gun and sacrificed his life. For this act of selflessness, Sukanavalu was awarded the Victoria Cross, the first Fijian recipient. The story itself is only one example of the sacrifices made by men and women from the Commonwealth and Nepal. Yet despite their sacrifice, they face a shameful choice if they wish to make a home in this country for which they risked their lives. Under current rules, non-UK members of our armed forces are exempt from immigration controls. But on discharge and after 4 years of service, they can apply for settlement, but at a cost of £2,500. That means just as they're starting anew, an average family would be landed with a bill of about 10 grand. Yet if they don't pay, they can't remain in the UK or access the services they've earned. Furthermore, the initial exemptions that joiners receive do not extend to family who are required to pay for visas, but only after service personnel have met an income threshold above that of a private soldier, so leading to many waiting years to bring their children over and some having to choose which child to leave behind. In May of this year, the government responded to this injustice by launching a public consultation. Unfortunately, though, the only proposal on offer is a visa fee waiver after 12 years service, a threshold so high that it will alleviate the cost for only a fraction of service personnel. Mr. Mayor, this is not good enough. We now need meaningful reform and a responsible approach to the problem. That means introducing a free and fair route to citizenship and, as we have no clue how many have been affected, establishing a dedicated unit to assist veterans similar to the Windrush Task Force. Mr. Mayor, no matter where you come from or what your background, once you choose to put a uniform and protect your country, you have made a life-changing commitment, one that you and your family pay for, one that changes you and them forever. Believing that, indeed knowing that, I am truly ashamed that my country has treated my brothers and sisters in this way. Thank you.
The motion has been seconded by Councillor Dollimore, who's actually making her maiden speech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I want to begin by paying tribute to my predecessor, Councillor Kelly Bond. She made a great contribution to our borough, and I wish her all the best. Mr. Mayor, it is an honour to follow Councillor Pritchard, who, as well as being our deputy leader, has also served for many years with the Royal Welsh. It is also a privilege to be making this my maiden speech on a matter of such importance. How we treat those who have served our country. How we treat those who put the uniform on, knowing the responsibility that comes with it. And how we treat their families who also sacrifice so much. Mr. Mayor, as a serving member of the Army Reserves myself, I am lucky to represent St Helier, home to many ex-servicemen and women. Lots of them are Gurkhas or Commonwealth veterans. Our whole community is supported by Hague Homes, who do a brilliant job of housing our forces community. Mr. Mayor, the military covenant is a promise that we as a council and as a country make to our forces. A promise to those to treat those who serve and their families fairly. Mr. Mayor, this is why I find the current system of visas for veterans unconscionable. As Councillor Pritchard has explained, the current system is broken. I worry that it breaks that solemn promise. To our brilliant Commonwealth and Nepalese veterans, it says pay up or pack up. Take the case of Taitusi Ratavalval, a Fijian veteran who served for more than a decade in some of the most dangerous places on earth. Not only was he told to pack up or pay up, he was left in legal limbo and without access to free healthcare. He was forced to crowdfund £30,000 to pay for life-saving surgery. Mr. Mayor, I hope colleagues would agree this is no way to treat those who serve our country and wear the uniform. It shouldn't matter where you were born or who you are. What matters is your service. This is a scandal and one that this government has known about for years. We plead with them to change direction and give Commonwealth and Nepalese veterans and their families the dignity they deserve. I would also urge everyone to take part in the public consultation and make clear that the current proposal does not go anywhere near far enough. Our veterans deserve better, and our great country can do better than this. Just now, we rightly reaffirmed our commitment to offer sanctuary to those who come to Merton after they flee war or persecution. And Mr. Mayor, may I say, we resisted the attempts of some to make it a partisan football. As someone who's spent much of my career working with refugees across the world, I welcome that spirit. In that spirit, we must show our solidarity tonight with our forces community too. I move the motion.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Merton Conservative Group values every member of our outstanding armed forces and is humbled when non-UK nationals choose to serve our country. We agree that there is a strong argument that different rules should apply for those who are willing to risk their lives to protect us all in recognition of the unique sacrifice they have made. The government explicitly provides for non-UK veterans discharged from Her Majesty's forces to obtain settlement. This is through indefinite leave to remain in the UK or indefinite leave to enter the UK after having served for 4 years or more, or having been discharged for medical reasons due to their services. Mr. Mayor, non-UK personnel applying by themselves are not required to meet an income or assets threshold, do not need to be sponsored by an employer, and do not need to meet any requirements granting their skills, knowledge of the English language, or knowledge of life in the UK. Furthermore, Commonwealth citizens can also choose to naturalise as British citizens while they are serving, and can use their time both in the UK and on overseas assignments towards the 5-year UK residency criteria. We should all welcome the fact that this is a concession not offered to any other employment group. Mr. Mayor, the Merton Conservative Group are encouraged that the Home Office and Ministry of Defence are listening closely to MPs, campaigners and members of the public about whether those who have served in the armed forces should pay settlement fees. Every veteran is important, and we should all ensure they are valued and supported. Non-UK nationals who have served our country deserve to be recognised, and we welcome the fact that the government has been clear that if a change to policy is needed, ministers will not hesitate to act. Mr. Mayor, the Conservative Group will be supporting this motion tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Bakari.
I recently met the Royal British Legion on this very matter, and you'll be pleased to know that the Liberal Democrats fully support this motion.
Right. If there are no further speakers, Councillor Pritchard, do you wish to use your right to reply? Okay. No one has spoken against. Are the recommendations agreed then? Great.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item 15 on the report of the agenda, the local plan, submission of a second to the Secretary of State. Councillor Welton, will you move this report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I formally move the recommendations in this report and the amendments. This report is to give formal approval for submission of the report for independent examination, which will be preceded by a 6-week consultation between July and September 2021 in advance of its submission for independent examination. This is a document which will set the planning strategy and policies for the borough alongside site designation for new developments. Once adopted, the plans and the map will be the main reference point guiding planning decisions in the borough. This is a process which has been ongoing since late 2017, which has been prepared in line with statutory regulations, informed and improved by a total of 9 months of public consultation, local and national research, and the latest data from a variety of sources. It is also in conformity with the Mayor's London Plan, which was passed earlier this year, the National Policies Framework 2019. Without up-to-date planning policies, the NPPF and other material considerations can be used to guide local planning decisions rather than adopted local council policy. This means that local issues may not be able to be adequately considered in decision-making, especially at planning appeals. I would like to take this opportunity of thanking the work of BPAC, who considered the report at their meeting last Thursday. They made a number of amendments to the document. I'm also happy to accept the Liberal Democrat amendment, though it would have been helpful if these changes could have been made at the time of the BPAC meeting in order that they could have been properly considered by this committee. As the plan has taken into account feedback from the public, we have made a number of amendments. One of the major items was tall buildings in Colliers Wood, and as a result, we have incorporated changes that no building should be higher than the existing tower. Last year, we adopted a climate change strategy and action plan, which followed on from the declaration of a climate emergency 2 years ago. The local plan has made tackling the causes of climate change and managing its effects one of its key strategic priorities, and is now embedded throughout the plan. The plan also promotes healthy streets through boosting local business and high streets, reducing pollution and supporting walking and cycling, which would all help to create a local neighbourhood where residents can enjoy. Policies to support delivering the borough's commitment to net zero carbon by 2050. However, there are dangers on the horizon with the planning bill going through Parliament, which is likely to have a significant effect on our powers to determine planning permission and how land is designated. As a council, we have expressed our concerns about this bill, which will remove much democratic oversight on planning and land designation. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking the work of the Future Merton team for their work on the report, especially Tara Butler. It is one of the most important documents we produce as a council, and I ask that council approve the plan tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Stringer, I understand you're formally seconded. Right, thank you. Councillor Quilliam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I formally second and reserve my right to speak.
Okay, thank you. There is an amendment which we've already heard has been accepted. Yes. So, Councillor McGrath, can you please move the amendment?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak very briefly. This amendment is to deal with a particular problem we have in the Apostles part of Dundonald Ward, which are 12 roads running up to Rains Park Station, where very small houses are sometimes being divided into even smaller houses, into smaller flats. And because of the way the local plan was previously written, the planning committee had no ability to reject that. This, of course, doesn't mean that they necessarily will reject them, but it means that depending on the circumstance, it may do so. It will be very well received, and I thank the Labour group for supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fairclough, you're seconding.
I formally second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have the following down to speak, which is Councillor Crowe and Councillor Dean. If there are no others, I'll take Councillor Crowe first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We need affordable homes, and this Conservative government is to be congratulated for setting ambitious housing targets. However, when it comes to Merton, Labour fails to listen to residents, and it continues to champion the Croydonisation of the borough. We don't need to build into the sky to create the homes we need. High-rise flats do not make suitable homes for young families. Our residents know it, and so does the MP for Mitcham and Morden. I quote from Siobhan's own website: as chair of the Housing Committee, she set about demolishing the tower blocks in Phipps Bridge, replacing them with proper homes and gardens. So we should focus on underdeveloped land and brownfield sites, of which we have many in Merton. Unfortunately, this Labour administration lacks the necessary imagination and determination, as clearly demonstrated by the Moranton development fiasco. £2 million was spent and not a single home built. Of course, the most shameful aspect of this benighted local plan is that Labour have taken so long to produce it. Had the plan been produced to time and had it reflected the views of the residents of West Barnes, they would not now be subject to the horror of a tower of 15 stories on the Tesco site. Mr. Mayor, Tesco Towers will be an enduring reminder of Labour's many planning failures. This local plan is not good enough, and the residents of Merton deserve better. That is why we on the Conservative side will not be voting in favour of the submission of the local plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add some preciseness to the Lib Dem motion. I'm very supportive of it, and propose an amend to the local plan, reverting to a previous positive rule. Back in 2006, a Conservative administration managed to prohibit the conversion of small family homes into tiny flats in the borough, such as in the Apostles area, where there are 1,200 homes. With a shortage of family homes, which we've been reminded of tonight by the Cabinet member, this made sense. The policy stood the test of time until 2019. And in that year, this council ceased to treat the supplementary planning guidance as material, eradicating it from the local development framework. It means the smallest of family homes, two-bed houses, the ones that are cheapest on the market, the houses that act as a step up, the ones that are less likely to be livable as two even tinier flats, are no longer protected from developers. People, both individuals and families, love to live in a house, however small, in a beautiful area, in a mixed community. Under current rules, each and every small house could disappear, and that mixed community would disappear too. Therefore, Conservative councillors believe that this council should reapply protection to small two-bed houses. As the Cabinet member has explained, overcrowding is a huge issue, and the reason is obvious. The vast majority of planning applications in this borough are for tiny flats, ripe for more overcrowding, even though the local plan voted through by this council asks for many more larger family homes. It's not difficult to ensure developers abide by borough rules, which have been backed by both the London Mayor and the national government. So we ask that small houses revert to being protected. It works for this council and the people of Merton. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
If there are no further speakers, can I ask Councillor Welton if you wish to use your right to reply? Right, we have a motion that's been amended. The amendment's been
Excuse me,
accepted, so we don't need to vote on the amendment.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Councillor Quilliam, sorry. Yes, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I really just wanted to use this opportunity to thank everyone that's been involved in developing the local plan and making it as good as it is. That's the hundreds of residents, the local residents organisations that have responded to the consultations, local businesses that have done the same. Councillor Welton has obviously mentioned council officers as well who've worked really hard on this plan, which goes to hundreds of pages. It covers the whole borough, and to councillors as well who have been involved and members of BPAC who have been, I think, constructive over that time in helping to inform the plans that's gone forward. I think it's sad that the Conservatives have used this to make a political point. It's clear that they're sort of running scared of their own government's planning reforms that are likely to come later this year, which Councillor Welton has already said are likely to take further powers away from local councils and local residents, particularly I think after their recent by-election failures, and that they're erroneously trying to pin the decision of their planning inspectorate and the failure of their Secretary of State that's led to the overturning of the decision on the Red Road development in my ward. That was clear. The planning committee were clear on their decision, and that has been overturned by the inspectorate and the government. Based on the government's rules, this isn't something that is the responsibility of Merton. So I just wanted to make that clear. But I think that my main point really is just to thank everybody. I think this is a good local plan. It's hard. It demonstrates our commitment to tackling climate change as a community, as a council, our commitment to more and better affordable housing, and our commitment to supporting our local economy and local businesses. So I formally second. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. As I was about to say, there's been the amendment's been accepted by the Labour group. So can we move straight to the vote on the submission of the local plan as amended? Those voting at home, can you please indicate whether you're for, against, or not voting? And Councillor Stanford, can I have your vote, please?
Yeah, Councillor Stanford, for.
Thank you. So we have 24 for, 6 against. Those in the chamber, can I have those in favour, voting for submission of the local plan? Those against? Thank you. So the amended plan, the chamber 4, 20 against, 8, 1 not voting. Thank you. Can I remember, members, we're now quarter to 10, so we're approaching the guillotine. 10:15, all right. Okay, I don't need to call that yet then. Item 16. Pardon? Yes, okay. The plan Wimbledon application. Can I start, before we start, I understand that the whips wish to make some declarations of interest on this item. Councillor Christie.
No declaration from me, Mr. Mayor.
This is, I think this is in terms of people who are members of Plan Wimbledon from within the group. No, okay. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, declaration from Councillor Holden, Councillor Gretton, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Milton, Councillor Janice Howard, Councillor Andrew Howard, Councillor Williams, and myself, all who are proud to be supporters of Plan Wimbledon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGrath.
It's myself, Councillor Kohler, and Councillor Fairclough are all supporters of Plan Wimbledon.
Thank you. Councillor Southgate.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, but I am a member of Plan Wimbledon, as is Councillor Foley.
Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Welton, will you move this report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I formally move the recommendations as set out in this report. Merton Council received on the 19th of February an application from Plan Wimbledon to become the neighbourhood forum for a designated area in Wimbledon. This report follows on from the approval in March of a 6-week public consultation between the 12th of April and 23rd of May on the neighbourhood plan, which is required under the neighbourhood planning legislation on designating neighbourhood forums and areas. Since the end of the public consultation, officers have considered all aspects of the proposal, including the public consultation response and Plan Wimbledon's application against the neighbourhood planning legislation and guidance. It is regrettable that agreement could not be reached, but having considered all the responses, we do not believe that it currently satisfies the criteria that must be taken into account by the Council under Section 61F, Part 7A of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, in that its membership is not considered to be drawn from all places in the specified area or all sections of the community in that area. And furthermore, its proposal does not reflect in general terms the character of the entirety of the area. As a council, we are therefore legally required to refuse this application for designation as a neighbourhood forum in relation to the specified area. We had hoped that some of the issues could be addressed through the council designating it as a neighbourhood forum for a smaller area or areas other than those specified within its application, but felt that those options could not be recommended at this present time. This is set out in more detail in section 3 of the report under alternative options. Accordingly, it's recommended that this application is refused. We do recognise considerable work that has gone into this plan for many well-attentioned people living within Wimbledon who are passionate about the community. As there is no designated forum or area at this time, we do hope that Plan Wimbledon and representatives of the business community do work together to resolve the issues set out in this report, and we will not act as a restriction to revise proposals for designations coming forward if agreement can be reached. I also myself, as the Cabinet member, recently met with Plan Wimbledon to discuss the recommendations and why we felt it could not be approved at this stage. It was constructive dialogue, as I am keen to find a way that business and residents can work together, and I am open to continuing dialogue to find a way forward. I formally move the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. This is being seconded by Councillor Butler.
Speak.
You may. I have the following listed to speak: Councillor Fairclough and Councillor Southgate. So, Councillor Fairclough.
I no longer wish to use my right to speak.
Okay. Councillor Southgate.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as has been said, I am a member of Plan Wimbledon, and that has been pointed out. I'm also a fair-minded person. I think any fair-minded person would agree that Plan Wimbledon has done enough, more than enough indeed, to demonstrate its fitness to be designated as the neighbourhood forum for the Wimbledon area. So from more than 1,200 responses, we have been told 91% support the adoption of Plan Wimbledon, 88% approve the proposed boundary lines. Now, admittedly, a few business interests have chosen not to join at this stage. We need to be realistic and recognise that developers like F&C Commercial Property, which owns Morrison's and the Piazza, are not going to welcome an additional layer of community involvement. The report picks up on the absence of any responses from the Weir Road Industrial Estate. A lack of response, though, should not be interpreted as hostility. Besides, the All England Club, probably the most significant business in the north of the borough, is fully supportive of Plan Wimbledon, as is TfL, which owns many assets within the area, including underground stations, tram stops, bus infrastructure. Now, if you're going to insist that all business interests, as well as all residents associated within the area, are represented in the membership of Plan Wimbledon, you are setting the hurdles for adoption impossibly high. Neighbourhood forums may be no more than a sop to the middle classes in the otherwise frighteningly pro-development centralising government agenda set out in the white paper Planning for the Future. But it's the only sop we have. We need to grasp it with both hands. So let's ask ourselves, we're here to represent our residents or the big property developers? We will be voting for the amendment that will be forthcoming from the Conservatives and for Plan Wimbledon.
Thank you. We have an amendment, and I believe Councillor Holmes, you're moving the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. So I move this amendment on behalf of the Conservative group. Mr. Mayor, when thinking about this amendment, I was actually thinking of Sir Humphrey Appleby from Yes Minister, and listening to Councillor Welton this evening, he sounded exactly like Sir Humphrey Appleby, because he went through the minutiae of each detail and each piece of legislation, even down to subsection X of clause Y, to explain why this couldn't happen. But Councillor Southgate has himself made a very clear case that 92%, it says in one part of the report, of residents are in favour. If you look at why Councillor Welton and the Cabinet have decided not to do this, Mr. Mayor, it becomes even more ridiculous. 2.30 refers to they weren't clear on the precise number of members. 2.31 refers to it was difficult to assess the members because they didn't have a precise number. 2.41 refers to the possibility of a quorum not including a business representative. Mr. Mayor, if the will was there, all of those things could very easily have been dealt with. It would have been very easy to go back, to ask those questions, to carry out an assessment, and to put this through this evening. Mr. Mayor, 92% of residents who participated said they wanted to do this. We're meant to be encouraging residents, not discouraging them. Somewhere along the line, the Labour group decided they didn't want this. The trouble is, Mr. Mayor, is this is dangerous for two reasons. The first reason is no one's going to believe it. Nobody in this borough is going to believe that something that had 92% support, have we ever rejected anything that had 92% support? Have we ever done that? Nobody's going to believe that it's been legitimately rejected on ridiculous technical points that could easily have been resolved by going back. Mr. Mayor, this is ridiculous. And the second one's even more dangerous. The second one is to do with democracy, to do with encouraging community action, to do with encouraging our residents to get involved. And frankly, Mr. Mayor, if we don't go back on this and adopt the Conservative amendment, we're all going to look complete fools. Rarely has there been something in this chamber that is so clear-cut. And this evening, and I have great respect for Councillor Welton, but this evening we heard the biggest classic of all, which is that earlier this evening, one of the reasons Councillor Welton gave was because of Love Wimbledon, a fantastic group set up to advocate for local businesses. This is something different. This is a group set up to advocate on local planning issues. The very fact that Councillor Welton should compare two organisations set up for different reasons as part of his justification for rejecting shows just how ridiculous this is and how proud Humphrey Appleby would be of him. So, Madam, sorry, I knew somebody would make the mistake. I didn't know it would be me. So, Mr. Mayor, we do have one opportunity tonight to accept this amendment and avoid looking very foolish. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
the amendment.
A point of order, if I can. I just need to declare that Councillor Stringer is a member of Plan Wimbledon. Apologies for not doing that earlier.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Can that be noted? The amendment is being seconded by Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm seconding the Conservative amendment to this Plan Wimbledon item. I'm a proud supporter of Plan Wimbledon, which is a resident-led community group. They are a collection of Wimbledon residents who have come together over a number of years to make Wimbledon a nicer place to live, work and play. Plan Wimbledon has some very professional and knowledgeable residents, including some local businesses, community groups and councillors from across the parties, including your own co-deputy leader has just been mentioned. Therefore, it's a deep shame that the Labour Cabinet and Council now want to torpedo Plan Wimbledon and their designation and their area. You sounded supportive earlier this year. Now you seem to be finding any way to shut it down. I ask you this simple question. What percentage of residents does this Labour Council require to allow for such a neighbourhood forum to exist? 92% of residents who replied to the consultation supported Plan Wimbledon. Do Labour require Soviet-style 99% approval before they accept the wishes of residents? Plan Wimbledon's membership is wide and varied and includes, for instance, 443 individual residents who actually work in the area as well, 12 resident associations, 51 businesses, 17 councillors, 66 individual visitors or those who live elsewhere but work in the area, 8 faith groups and 9 others, and that number is still rising. It is worth noting that Plan Wimbledon does have business support, and it's worth also pointing out the consultation was timed at a very difficult moment for businesses who were just coming out of the lockdowns and had many other things to be getting on with. Given time, support and better understanding, I'm sure many of those businesses would support this as well. Also, Cabinet claimed there was not enough young people support, as Councillor Butler mentioned at BPAC last week. So maybe Councillor Butler could explain why he didn't join or advise Plan Wimbledon if he was going to, so that they can better understand what more they need to do for young people such as Councillor Butler himself to participate. Plan Wimbledon is not a danger to this council. All they want to do is help shape the town they live in, what they call home, for the benefit of all the residents who live in the area, the businesses, and even the council itself. Please support our amendment tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Butler, do you wish to use your reserve
Thank
right?
you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm impressed with the Plan Wimbledon engagement in this process. I look forward to all of the council and all of those here supporting the future of Plan Wimbledon, continuing to engage with them. The Conservatives' motion would have us believe this is make or break now, where it's not. As was confirmed in this report and during the latest report to the Borough Plan Advisory Committee, there are legal levels of support from businesses needed that Plan Wimbledon has still not met. There's also still opportunity, as has just been mentioned, to engage younger people, which this hasn't, as I did mention in that meeting. And there is more opportunity to do so. And I will be planning to join once they have met those levels of support myself. I think it's vital that they do have engagement from younger people, because it's precisely those people that will be living with the changes that a potential neighbourhood plan that could be implemented by the group would have on the area, such a large area it is, for a long time to come. So I do second this report, and I wish the best to Plan Wimbledon in the future, and I will give them my support, and I'm sure my colleagues will too. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. If there are no further speakers, Councillor Wilton, do you wish to use your right to reply? Okay. So I now will call a vote on the amendment. So those of you who are voting remotely, can you indicate by voting on the screen either for or against or not voting on the Conservative amendment? Councillor Stanford, can I have your vote, please?
Councillor Stanford, against.
Yes, thank you. Those who are voting remotely, for 13, against 16, 1 not voting. Those in the room, please, in the chamber. Those for the amendment? Those against the amendment? Those in the chamber here, 13 for, 15 against, 1 not voting. So the amendment falls. So we now move to, I hesitate to say, is it agreed? Okay. Can we vote on the unamended original resolution, please? Can I? Okay, we've got the one on screen. Those at home, can you vote for, against, or not voting? Councillor Stanford. This is for the original Plan Wimbledon recommendation.
I'm not sure what I'm voting for now. I'm not voting.
Okay. Right, those on Zoom, for 11 against, 14, 3 not voting. Those in the chamber, those for, please indicate. Those against? Those not voting. For those present, it's 15 for, 13 against, 1 not voting. Thank you. So therefore, the motion is carried. I now propose to deal with the constitutional changes item, but we are at 2 minutes past 10 now. So I propose we deal with this and then deal with the rest under the guillotine. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. Item 17, constitutional changes. Councillor Stringer, will you move the report formally?
Yes, I will move the report, and Councillor Byers may wish to speak on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Byers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the report, and in doing so, I just wanted to thank all members of the working group for ploughing through all of this over the past year or so. And I also wanted to thank Louise Round for all of her work in bringing it all together. And I commend the report to Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The report is being seconded by Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Formally seconded, and I'll reserve my right to speak.
Okay. I have the following listed to speak. That's Councillor Williams and Councillor Kohler. Councillor Williams.
Jackie Weaver, you've no authority here, said the beleaguered chairman of the Handforth Parish Council, who went on to reference the standing orders in the video that went viral. So let's be clear. When the Blair government did away with the council committee system under the Local Government Act 2000, it took away from the vast majority of councillors the right to participate in making actual decisions. It seems in Merton, most councillors on all sides are quite happy about that. However, I think this revision of the Constitution has missed a trick to change the format of full council meetings, which are simply a local invention. I cannot believe that councillors failed to look at best practice elsewhere after 20 years, because that's what officers did during the whole exercise. But members, this is not about officers, it's about us. It's not about the legalities of dotting I's and crossing T's, but about how we want to run our meetings to achieve our objectives, and not about minimizing the discomfort of officers 6 or 7 times a year. I'm referring specifically to the changes in the timetabling of submission of questions, motions, and amendments. Frankly, at the task group, I lost the argument about how groups function and come to decisions about debates, or about the time pressures on councillors who often also have their own day jobs and family commitments. If you are content to let a minority run the show for you, you will be happy with these amendments. And at S&GP, there were few ripples of discord. So for the time being, we acquiesce. And as my time is up and I will speak on other items, I will say that we nevertheless commend.
Please. Right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Kohler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't planning to speak, but I just have to say something after Councillor Williams' bizarre intervention. He and I were on the committee together. We won some arguments, we lost some arguments. I didn't hear any of that, what he's just said now. True, it is true that occasionally he simply wanted us to change the rules for the benefit of the Tory group and how they run their meetings. But of course, it's a council, not just run for the council group. And his preposterous comments about people having working lives. We've just heard Councillor Gretton attack the Lib Dems for saying we couldn't move to a 5 o'clock meeting today because we have jobs to do. Now he pretends jobs are important for his group, and that's really what was driving him. Councillor Williams, please be honest. We had a good group. We disagreed on some things, we agreed on others. The thing I'm most proud of, tucked away in there, is that we are going to give the community forums more say. The community forums are going to be empowered to actually—
1 minute remaining.
Their power. The community forums are going to be empowered to use their power to put forward motions. We've done that by adjusting the way the meeting works. There's subtle changes, but it will help. We must improve democracy. We must get the community more involved. The community forums are key to that. So there's lots there, which is good. It's detail. For Councillor Williams, that was a sad and a speech that did you no credit. And yes, I'd finally like to thank the officers who were brilliant, and Louise Round, whose patience was phenomenal. Many thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Christie, do you wish to speak now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I reserved because I thought there might be something to add, but there clearly isn't. So I just recommend the report as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Byers, do you wish to use your right to reply?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Okay. As I have no further speakers, unless I hear any dissent, I'll take it as agreed. Is agreed? Thank you. Okay. We are moving very close to the guillotine. If it falls, then I propose that we take the remaining items and we don't extend the guillotine. Is that agreed? Right, okay. So item 18, Member Code of Conduct. Councillor Stringer, will you move this report formally?
Yes, I do. I move this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Byers, you're speaking?
Only to move it, Mr. Mayor.
Right, okay, thank you. It's been seconded by Councillor Christie.
Again, formally second and reserve if necessary.
Right, thank you. I have the following list to speak. Is this déjà vu? Councillor Williams and Councillor Kohler.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But as you've spotted, I I hadn't had a chance to finish my speak because I thought I had 3 minutes. But what I was going on to say was that Section 4A about the procedures is not the only part of the Constitution. And indeed, we are now at another part of the Constitution where the council is being recommended to take a Mertonized version of the Local Government Association Code of Conduct. I wanted to also say that there has been a huge amount of work done on the whole Constitution, including the bit we might not get to under the guillotine, for the monitoring officer and her team, notwithstanding the reservations that I expressed earlier, which, as I said, nevertheless, we commend to the council for adoption, as I do for the Code of Conduct, and if I get a chance to, would do for the contract standing orders. I hope that satisfies Councillor Kohler as well.
Thank you. Councillor Kohler, briefly.
Hold on, I'm allowed as long as him. But frankly, I didn't understand a word of what he was talking about. So I'm happy not to respond on that point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Christie?
No need, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Byers?
Nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Right, as I have no further speakers, unless I hear any dissent, I'll take that as agreed. Agreed. Thank you. I think 1 minute left. Okay. Revisions to standing orders. Can that be moved by Councillor Stringer?
I move this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Byers, you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, it's been seconded by Councillor Christie.
Formally seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Williams and Councillor Kohler, do you want to speak at the same time? Okay, Councillor Kohler?
No, thank you.
Right. No right to reply, wish to be exercised. Okay. I have no further speakers, and unless there are dissent, I'll take that as agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Changes to membership committees, which is under the guillotine now, I think. So it's, oh, no, another minute to go. Okay, can that be moved? Moved? Seconded? Councillor Barlow and Councillor Kohler, do you wish to speak?
No, agreed, don't need to speak.
Right.
Only to
Okay.
say England have just scored a second goal with 2-1.
Well, is the report agreed then? As I hear no dissent. Right, thank you. The petitions can be delivered to the table in front, please. And can I just, while that's happening, then ask Councillor McLean to tell us what the theme is for the next, oh, sorry.
Okay.
Can you put on the table down there, please?
Mr. Mayor, also, as I'm not in the chamber today, I will be forwarding to Democracy Services the petition from the West Barnes Conservative Action Group on cleaning up West Barnes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other petitions to come?
Shall I also take the opportunity to, the strategic theme for the next council meeting will be children and young people with a focus on the dedicated schools grant.
Right, thank you. I think we got there. Okay. I hope that the next meeting that I chair will be a more regular meeting. As George Lazenby said, he said in on Emergency Secret Service, this didn't happen to the previous guy. So I don't want another hybrid one. So